All right, we're here at MTAC with an absolutely stupendous guest. Please introduce yourself.
I am Martin Billany, also known on the internet as Little Kuriboh, the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged and part of Team 4-Star's Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
Excellent. So, what projects are you currently working on?
Currently, I am actually breaking into professional voiceover. I'm recording for a number of TV shows, which are actually, it's kind of scary. I never really imagined myself being in the position that I'm in, 5-6 years ago. If you'd even told me that people would want me to perform in any situation, be it live or recorded, I would be very surprised, and I would call you a liar. But the position I'm in now, where I'm going into the studio and sitting alongside people that I've admired for a long time and recording alongside them, it's really overwhelming. I unfortunately can't talk about what those projects are at the moment, and I wish I could, but I can at least tell you that they're happening. I'm recording for an independent game called Icebound, and it's being released on PC and the iStore, and I'm playing the main character in that called Dougal, and it's a huge amount of work, but it's an independent game, and it's sort of in the vein of it's sort of a visual novel style, but it's got puzzle elements, sort of like Professor Layton or Phoenix Wright, and I'm like the rugged, handsome alchemist character, and it's very out of my depth. I'm very confused most of the time, because I'm not used to playing a serious role like that. I'm used to being the goofy sidekick, but this time they decided to go against type, I suppose. But aside from that, I'm still doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged on and off. I'm still helping Team 4-Star out when they need me for voices. But overall, I'm just going from convention to convention and meeting people and having a great time.
Excellent. Okay. Speaking of the Abridged series,
yes.
What is it like to literally have started the bandwagon that then everyone jumped on?
It was very intimidating at first. When I started making Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, I was very closed off from the world. I was sort of a hermit, and I didn't know how people would react. When I first made Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged Episode 1, I was hoping maybe 5 or 10 people would watch it and have a laugh, but it turned into 500,000 people having a lot of laughs, which is great. I've always wanted to make people laugh more than anything in my life, and the fact that I'm able to do that on a large scale, as I am, has been one of the great joys of my life. And I honestly, it's like if I have a bucket list, that is number one, being able to make as many people laugh as I have. But originally, I would be so scared of the idea of such a large number of people watching the show and judging it and judging me as a result, that I would upload an episode and then I'd turn off the computer and I'd run and hide and be like, oh God, what do they think? Do they like this one? Do they hate it? And I was convinced for a long time that eventually, that everybody rallying and supporting me would turn into the torch and pitchforks wielding mob trying to hunt me down, being like, this episode was really bad. Why did you make it? And occasionally I do get those comments, but I've learned to live with them. Seeing other people make a Abridged series as a result has been fantastic. Like, a lot of people are like, do you mind that people are basically ripping off your idea? And I'm like, have you seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged? I basically ripped off Yu-Gi-Oh! So I'd be a huge hypocrite if I were to be like, yeah, they're taking what I did and ran with it, because that's awesome. Like, imitation, which is loosely used in this context, is the most sincere form of flattery. I believe that because I imitate people I imitate because I love their work. And the idea that people like Team 4-Star or any of the other Abridges watched my show or enjoyed the show and decided to, apply it to something else, and obviously in many cases better than I did, is amazing. Like, I love watching other people excel beyond what I've done, and as far as I'm concerned, it's healthy competition as well. They're good friends of mine. A lot of the other Abridges, Team 4-Star were the groomsmen at my wedding, and getting to share ideas with them and basically play off of each other and watch each other's work improve every time there's a new episode is fantastic, just from a creative standpoint and just from the standpoint of being like, I'm a friend of yours and it's great to watch you fly with your work. So it's great. It's really great. Yes.
First of all, I just want to say appreciate you coming to MTAC and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. Who would you say has had the biggest impact on your career?
Oh gosh, on my career, everybody involved with Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely. I would be remiss if I didn't obviously mention the fact that everyone who worked on Yu-Gi-Oh! Both the Japanese version and the English version had a huge influence on me and where I am today. There are a lot of people who compare the two, which is really weird to me because if anything, I'm imitating an imitation of the Japanese. So it's like 2 steps away from the original. So I'm as far away from that as you can imagine. But as far as like any one person having an influence on my career, he's a guest here this weekend, Dan Green, the voice of Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically. I've aspired to be as good as him, and have aspired to be, in everything I've seen him in behind the scenes, he's been the nicest person. He's always had time for people, and meeting him this weekend has been a pleasure because he's really gone out of his way to show the fans and me occasionally that he's appreciative of them and their passion. And I've always admired the characters he's played, but I admire him twofold compared to that because he embodies the spirit of those characters because not only does he provide the voice, but he provides the heart, and that's what I admire the most.
Was this your first time meeting him?
My first time. I mean, it's his first convention appearance, I believe, so I've never really been able to actually communicate with the guy. I've had people tell me things that he said about Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged and things that he said about me, and it's never been negative. It's always been like, oh, yeah, it's a funny show, and he seems like a talented guy. But this is the first time I've ever been able to shake his hand and thank him for everything he's done and tell him that he's a hero.
Fantastic.
I'm very appreciative of the convention for. I know they didn't arrange it around me or anything like that, but it was extremely cool that the stars aligned and allowed us to be here, and that it was a positive experience and a positive environment for both of us. Yes, right in the back.
This one's kind of it doesn't really relate. It kind of relates to the Bridge series, but what gave you the idea to do gameplay videos in character of Merrick?
Like many things in my life, I ripped it off from somebody else. There's a series called Freeman's Mind, which is a machinima, and I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's a playthrough of the original Half-Life, where Gordon Freeman is basically having a running commentary in his head, and he's just commenting on it like he's a regular office worker that's just really annoyed by the situation that he's in. And it's really amazing, it's really creative and very funny. And so obviously, it's derivative of that, but I took it in a different direction, wherein I had the Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged characters playing the games, but just talking as the player rather than as the character in the game. So it's been one of my favorite things to do. I love video games, and I pick games that I particularly enjoy, and characters that I have an easy time playing. There are certain characters that it's really difficult for me to just slip into and just be the character without having a script in front of me. So I tend to pick like Marek or Yami or even Kaiba. Those characters are fun to just break into because they have a very there are side characters that aren't as established as those characters, so it's a lot more fun and to play around as them.
So do you plan on making more videos of that variety?
Definitely. The next video I'm making is going to be another Marek Plays Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. It's a very popular series. I didn't expect it. I've had people come to me and say, I bought that game because Marek plays it, and I'm like, that's awesome, because I love that game. It's so glitchy, but it's a broken mess, but it's a great broken mess. It's an awesome card. Yes?
My magazine's about charity events and how celebrities do that. Can you tell me about any of the charity involvement, if there's a big charity that you hold close to your heart?
I've helped out a number of charities. The most recent one, I believe, I forget. I believe we helped out the on the East Coast. There was a Hurricane Sandy. We did a fundraiser for that. What we tend to do is we do live streams where we invite voice actors that we know round, and we do a lot of events over the internet with like a 24-hour broadcast where we'll watch things, or we'll play games, or we'll do like interviews, and we do auctions on eBay, and we'll all the money goes towards charity. And we just use the channel on YouTube that I have to raise as much money as possible and awareness. The next one we're planning on doing is Rain. We're going to be doing one in June because it's the anniversary of the day my wife was sexually assaulted. So we want to help raise both awareness and money for the charity that helps survivors of that. So that's going to be mid-June, and I'm going to be posting about it very soon. And we're hoping to have a much bigger lineup of guests for that. Sorry, I don't have more details about that. My wife will be. Sure. Hello.
So going back to the game,
Yes.
did you play Yu-Gi-Oh on the PS1?
Which one?
I think it was called Forbidden Memories. It's been
Forbidden Memories.
years since I played.
I had that one briefly. It was one of those where the rules didn't make that much sense.
No, the game was like you stack cards too.
Right.
It was weird.
It was really odd. Like a lot of those games
Has
before
Merrick
the
played
3D.
that one yet?
People want him to play the one on the GameCube where all the Yu-Gi-Oh characters are like Alexander the Great, and it was the War of the Roses. That one.
Duelist of the Roses.
Duelist of the Roses. That one.
I know it's on PS2. It might be on GameCube.
It's on GameCube. I have the one on GameCube, so
I would like to see Merrick play
Yeah.
that.
I just need the right software to be able to record the footage. That's the only thing I'm missing. But that would be hilarious. Or even just all the Yu-Gi-Oh characters reacting to themselves as these like alternate universe, ancient history characters. But that PS1 game I remember being kind of strange. But everything before the Nintendo DS, they didn't really follow the rules of the card game, which was okay because the show didn't either. So. But yeah, I played a few of the video games. They've gone much better.
Oh, cool.
I believe they have. They follow the rules to the T. So.
Is there a dream role for you? A character or project that you would love to be involved
In a professional setting? I would love to be in any... I'm wearing a shirt. I'd love to be in the Fallout series. Anything that Bethesda does. Not just because... if you hear one voice in a Bethesda game, they tend to be every voice in the game, so I get a lot of work out of it. But I play the hell out of those games, so I'd be honored to just be a guy who gets shot in the face in something like that. I'd love to be in a Persona game, because I'm a huge fan of that series, and I'd love to date myself in the game at some point. That's a dream of mine. Another thing on the bucket list is to date myself in the video.
Every kid has their first job. Every kid has their first boss that they hated. Do you remember your first job that either your first job or the first job that you hated so much that you just didn't want to go back?
I mean, I worked in retail for a long time. And funnily enough, doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, like, I'd been doing it for years, and then I started making the YouTube videos, and people... When I got home, I would come back to these amazing comments on the videos that people were supportive of me and that they enjoyed the videos. And it made things easier for me in the long run. I knew, even though I was miserable at work, when I got to come home, there was a nice email waiting for me, or there was, just knowing that I was somewhere at some point during the day I was making a person laugh was enough for me to be able to brace any annoying customer, The boss was never around, so that's why I hated them. But at the same time, it's good in a way because you can get away with stuff. But it was a miserable experience. I actually had somebody come up to me and ask, "Where's the new episode?" one time, and I had to sort of do like shifty eyes to left and right, make sure nobody was around. And I'm like, "It's coming." I actually dressed up as Seto Kaiba for the Halloween one time at work, and only a couple of people knew who I was. The rest of them just thought I was some weirdo. Which was awesome.
What's been your most interesting challenge?
In making Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Making the card games funny has been really difficult because here's the thing. Every episode is essentially a character walks into a room, another character walks into the room, they have a card game, one of them loses, usually not Yugi, and then the episode's over. And trying to play a spin on that every single time is really, really hard to make it fresh and interesting for the viewers. And it ultimately comes down to how the characters play off of each other. But I do try to acknowledge as much of the card game aspect as I can. It's really difficult because those things are so complex and so involved, and they often use the same cards because it's the characters' decks and the strategies. And how do you make that funny? It's such a challenge. But I like to think that it's still fresh. One of my biggest regrets in making the show is there's a, I don't know if any of you watched Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge, but there's in season 1 it builds up to this tournament that ends with the finals of the tournament where like basically 4 of the characters duel it out and then they have to face the creator of the game. And one of the biggest regrets I have is that I skipped over a lot of the semi-finals because I was like, nobody's going to want to watch 4 episodes of these guys playing card games. There's nothing else going on. It couldn't be funny. And then there's another tournament later in the series, and I intentionally stuck it out, and I made sure that I abridged every episode of that and every duel. And I was really proud of those episodes. I think they're some of my strongest work. And a lot of the fans think that too. And so I almost wish that I could go back and redo the season 1 finale because I feel like there's a lot of humor that I didn't take advantage of there. But that's been the biggest challenge, is making those bloody card games funny. You know? Oh my god. Yes.
What are some of your interests outside of acting?
Outside of acting, I love movies, I love video games, I love writing. I really enjoy just being self-contained and just being able to creatively explode onto the screen whatever is in my head. It's I love tabletop games as well. I actually just bought this ring, which is a D20, but it's on my thumb, and I can just spin it anytime I want, and it comes up with a score. And I've been doing it all weekend, being like, how successful is this panel going to be? Oh, I got a natural 20. I actually got a natural 20. I'm so excited. But yeah, I'm getting into that. I love telling stories. That's one of the reasons I love tabletop, is because I'm trying to GM a bunch of different games, and just getting the players involved in the story and excited for what's going to happen next is really cool to me.
Do you have a favorite setting or system?
My favorite system, purely from a storytelling standpoint, is Call of Cthulhu. It's a really easy one to set up, so there isn't much math involved for setting up the characters. A lot of it is common sense, and there is some really cool stuff you can do with the setting. Like, horror is, in my opinion, one of the most diverse genres, because you can't throw any situation into a romance story. You can't throw any situation necessarily into a comedy, but you can have horror fit into a lot of different genres. I feel like there's all kinds of story potential there, and I loved playing around with it. I just put together a Call of Cthulhu campaign based on My Neighbor Totoro, where Totoro is like there's a popular rumor on the internet where he's the god of death, and so I took that and ran with it, where basically it's an alternate version of what happened in the movie, where the mother died, and the children are like, they hold it against the people who were like, there's a company that's building on the land where the forest is, and Totoro is like coming to them in the night, and he's like creating trees and destroying their houses by just making the trees shoot up through the foundations of the buildings and killing them in the process. I'm really excited to play it, but yeah, I really enjoy Call of Cthulhu.
I think that might actually be more true to what Miyazaki's vision probably was.
That's a director's cut.
Yes.
So speaking of tabletop games,
Yes.
have you tried out Gloom before?
I have not tried out Bloom.
Gloom is extremely boring if you won't play it.
Oh yeah?
Because you have to kill everybody you play with.
Oh,
Kill
okay.
your family. But if you're playing with people, it's even more exciting. And they just, I think last year, did Cthulhu version, so
I've seen it around.
never got it away and kill everybody. Do it in your voice. Do it in your voice.
And the
Your voice is
voices.
awesome. That could be the whole thing. You're just playing the game on YouTube.
Oh yeah. I haven't thought about streaming them before. I should think about that. Yeah, that's a good idea. There's a bunch of different apps that I can do that. Yeah. Gloom, I will check it out.
So, since I got to ask Dan Green, I guess, I want to get your opinion since you do Yu-Gi-Oh! Drag is happening. Which one looks better? Yami Yugi or Seto Kaiba?
What's that?
Drag.
What's drag? I'll be honest, I'm
Guys
not...
dressing up as girls.
Oh, gender bend cosplay.
Yeah, which one would look better, Yugi or Seto Kaiba?
I've seen some really beautiful Yugis and Kaibas, I have to be honest. I've seen more female Kaibas in my time, but I've seen some really, really amazing Yugis. Like a Pharaoh Atem from the final season would be a great female cosplay, I think, just because the outfit is somewhat more revealing than his usual attire. So I think that would be a really cool thing for a female cosplay. But I think they both would be great. What did Dan Green say?
He said Seto makes a better drone.
For real?
Yeah. He said Seto's got legs, so I mean...
That's true. He is taller. He's got that going on. That's true. Oh, yes.
How does it make you feel when you come up behind people and they're quoting your abridged series?
When I come up behind people.
If you're out and about and someone just spouts off like, screw the rules, I have money, or something like that. Because I know my friends and I quote Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged
It's funny, a lot of the time, I bump into people who are fans of the show, and I know a lot of people, now that I've moved to LA, that watch the show for the last half a decade, and they've met me not knowing what to expect. They're always very careful not to quote it around me, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I feel kind of bad because I don't have a problem with the quotes at all. It's cool if people want to say the lines that I've written or like do the voices, because I mean, again, it goes back to the imitation thing. I do impressions of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters because I love that show, and so I know that they're doing it because they love the show. So it's a huge compliment to me. The only time it gets a bit overwhelming is when they keep doing it. There was somebody, especially when it's not my character, there was somebody who came up to me at a convention last year who just started going, Vegeta, 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 Vegeta. And I was stood there going, am I Vegeta? Is that who I am? But yeah, honestly, that sort of thing doesn't really bother me. It's just, like, at the end of the day, you're just expressing your interest in something when you do something like that. And unless you're making it a problem, unless you're insisting on somebody else or you're being obnoxious, there's no issue. But that's more a case of manners than it is like quotes or anything like that. So I'm happy with it. Wait about that.
On that note, actually, it's a little annoying when you tell your son to take out the trash and he says, screw the rules, I have money.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But I was going to ask, I'm sure you've done a lot of autographs. Is there anything really strange that you had to autograph that's at least PG rated?
PG rated. I've signed a few odd things, and no, they're not all PG rated, but the one that always comes to mind is, and it's not so much that it's odd, it's just that I thought it was cool. Somebody cosplayed as Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and they shaved their head in order to do it. And they came up to me and they were really excited. And they were like, "Can you sign my head?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so I signed it, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. And by the way, take out the trash.
Yeah, I was like 10.
Oh, okay. You said screw the rules, I have money to your mother when you were 10?
What money did you have?
My goodness.
You guys have 5 minutes.
Yes.
Really quickly, can you talk a little bit about coming to America from Britain and what that experience was like and sort of the process that made you decide to make a major life shift like that?
I moved because I met the woman I wanted to marry. And she is another guest here. She's Marianne Miller. I don't know if any of you have spoken to her yet. But we met in 2010 to a convention for the first time. And we'd been talking on Skype for a long time. And we knew that there was something between us. And it got to the point, and I don't know how many of you had the misfortune of being in a long-distance relationship, but it is one of the most painful experiences you can have, as well as being one of the best when you finally meet the people that you're in the relationship with. But we decided about late 2010 that we were either going to have to make a big decision as to where each of us was going to live, or just call the whole thing off. And that's like having to choose between the best thing that's ever happened to me or being alone. And I'm like, well, the choice is obvious. So I moved out to LA because she already had a lot of contacts and a job out there. And it was a very, it was actually, we did it the most efficient way possible. We did the fiancé visa, which it's simpler, but it's an ongoing process. I'm still doing paperwork all the time and having to go in and get my, what do you call it, blood work done and everything, and fingerprints all the time, and the government's checking on us every so often. We have to keep proving that we're in love, basically, which is very strange. We were tempted to send them our Skype conversations, where we're having role-play sex and everything like that. Make them feel really awkward about it. But
That's a new YouTube channel in itself.
But it was 8 months to get over here, and it was relatively straightforward. And aside from just the obnoxious paperwork and some of the questions they asked, like, have you ever committed genocide, and have you ever been a communist? And I'm like, nope. So it was relatively simple, but as I said, an ongoing process, but very worth it in the long run, because now I'm with the woman that I love, and it is the best time of my life.
Well, we're certainly happy to have you here, and we wish you both all the best.
Thank you so much.
Now, normally, I would ask, out of all the projects you've been involved with, which would benefit most from the inclusion of giant robots? But in your case,
they're already there, almost.
I think I should ask, card games and giant robots, would that be cooler than card games on motorcycles, or worse?
I mean, I think it would be cooler. I think card games on motorcycles, again, while I call it ridiculous, it's only slightly more ridiculous than giant holograms, But I do feel that the motorcycles kind of detract from the experience, because they're driving around the track, and if you're in the audience, you can barely tell what's going on. With a giant robot, it would be really bloody obvious. They'd be stood right in the middle. And it would be kind of cool if the robots were like the monsters or something like that. I think it would probably make more sense, if anything. Yeah. Make more sense than a lot of the stuff they do. Yes?
Because your wife mentioned, can you just say one word for me?
Sure.
Twat.
What?
We got one word.
I don't know. She has a filter.
My ears are too young.
Now, in American, you guys say twat, but not in England, we say twat. So,
It's more fun to say is
twat.
All right, thank you so
That's
much.
the last question in the interview, really?
I believe so.
So what's your upcoming schedule? Where will you be appearing next?
I will be appearing at Fanime in San Jose at the end of May. And then beginning of June, I have Anime Blues, which is in Memphis, which is a great show. And then I have Kineticon toward the end of June in Connecticut. And then I'll be at Anime Expo, Kineticon, I've said that already, Otakon. I'm going to Yamacon again, which is in the area toward the end of the year. It's going to be fantastic. Aside from that, I forget, but those are the main ones that I'm going to.
Well, on behalf of everyone here at MTAC, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.